The boy didn't do anything wrong. But one morning he woke up to a world that had aged without him. His mother's voice, once strong and clear, was now a fragile whisper. The friends he'd played with just yesterday looked at him with the polite distance of strangers. The village streets were the same, but the feeling of home was gone. He pinched himself, hoping to wake up, but this was no dream. Then he saw his reflection in a shop window. The same small face, the same curious eyes, the same little hands. He hadn't changed at all. Only the world had moved on. He ran through the streets, his small voice calling out names that no longer turned back. People stared, their faces a mix of pity and confusion. They whispered behind their hands and stepped aside as if he were a ghost. No one could explain what had happened, because no one knew. He was a relic, a child lost in a future he never lived. Just days earlier, he had been like everyone else, always busy, always planning, always trying to save time. He believed time was a precious resource, something you could store up by not wasting it. So he hurried through his meals, tasting nothing. He cut conversations short, nodding along without really listening. He pushed his feelings aside, promising himself he'd deal with them later. Later, he'd always say, when there's more time. He was so focused on the future that he forgot to live in the present. One evening, he wandered too far and found himself lost in the darkening woods. That's when he stumbled upon the tower. It wasn't a grand, imposing structure from a fairy tale. It was small, gray, and quiet. It felt ancient, as if it had been there forever, simply waiting. Driven by a curiosity he couldn't explain, he pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. There, in the dim light, sat an old man, a keeper, holding an hourglass. But the sand inside wasn't falling. It was perfectly still. The keeper looked up, his eyes holding a timeless wisdom. "You noticed," he said, his voice calm and steady.
Notice what?
The child asked, his gaze fixed on the motionless sand. The keeper gestured to the hourglass. "That time moves even when you don't live inside it." He then placed the hourglass into the child's small, outstretched hands. "This," the keeper explained, "holds every moment you decided not to be present. Every time you said later." As the child held it, the sand began to fall. Not slowly, not gracefully, but in a frantic, desperate rush. Faster than he could have ever imagined. Each grain was a moment he had dismissed. Every ignored phone call from his mother, every half-hearted goodbye, every laugh he didn't share, every tear he didn't comfort. Every moment he chose the promise of later over the reality of now. The sand cascaded downwards, a torrent of missed opportunities. It was the physical weight of all his deferred living. The sand rushed through the narrow neck of the glass, a constant, horrifying reminder of all the time he had given away. A terrible idea formed in his mind. If living his life made the sand fall, maybe the solution was to stop living, so he tried. He spoke less, afraid his words would waste a precious second. He loved less, building walls around his heart to avoid the messy, time-consuming business of connection. He filled his days with empty tasks, staying busy to avoid being present. But his strategy backfired. The sand only fell faster. The more he tried to control and save time, the more it slipped through his fingers. Then, one morning, it happened. He woke up, and the world was silent. The relentless whisper of falling sand had stopped. He looked at the hourglass. It was empty. A wave of relief washed over him. But when he looked out his window, that relief turned to ice. The world had aged without him. His friends were grown, his parents were old, and the life he was saving time for had happened while he wasn't looking. Panicked, he ran back through the woods, back to the silent tower. He burst through the door, tears streaming down his face. "Oh, I was so careful," he cried to the keeper. "I didn't waste a single moment. Saved all of it." The keeper looked at him, not with judgment, but with a deep, gentle sadness. "My child," he said softly, "you avoided it." With shaking hands, the child reached for the hourglass and on instinct turned it over. The last few grains of sand, which had been stuck at the top, froze in place.
"Go," the keeper urged.
"Go and live before it moves again." This time, the child understood. He left the tower and didn't just return to his life. He dove into it. He stayed for the whole story. He listened to his mother's frail voice, cherishing every word. He spoke what was in his heart before silence could steal the chance. He chose presence over preparation, now over later. He learned that time isn't a currency to be hoarded, but a river to be experienced. The grains of sand were still frozen, giving him a second chance, and he refused to let it go. Years passed. The child grew into a man, and the man grew old, his hair turning the color of snow. His life was full of memories, not of rushing, but of being. One day, he felt a pull to return to the forest. He found the tower unchanged by the seasons. Inside, the keeper waited, just as before. The old man looked at the hourglass. It was completely empty, both top and bottom. The keeper nodded slowly. "Time doesn't disappear when you save it," he said. "It leaves when you do." The old man, who was once that little boy, finally understood the profound truth. He hadn't been saving time. He'd been erasing himself from it. And right now, somewhere, someone watching this story feels a familiar sense of unease, a slight knot in their stomach, because they know they keep saying the same word that child did. The most expensive word in the world. Later? Don't let later become your empty hourglass. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more food for thought. Live fully right now.